Doug's true calling in life is to support others as they uncover their own unique gifts, and in so doing transform their lives in service. Doug is a nature-based soul guide. He is also an ardent beekeeper, a visual artist, a willy wanderer, a dream tracker, a dream ceremonialist, a heart-centered activist, and even a budding yoga instructor. We are here in a spiritual center of practices, Stacija, and a few hundred meters just from the Baltic Sea in the very middle of Nature Park Viņš, where Doug, with his co-guides, at the moment are guiding the longest Animas program, the Vision Quest, as well as his, if I understand correctly, own developed and own created program called Art and Soul. My name is Georgs Rubenis, and this is program Spiritual Practices, How to Find the Right One. Conversations with peoples about our choices, about how we choose the paths of our lives, and how we gradually become authentic people, and about how we create the unique pattern of our lives. So, hello, Doug.
Well, thank you for having me. This is very exciting. And just to say, it's a wily wanderer.
Wily?
Yeah.
Thank you for this. Yeah, but basically, usually, when we are thinking about ourselves and about the way how people are, or human being developed, so usually there are two parts of our lives. The one where we keep ourselves busy by developing our lives, how we have imagined those, and what is socially, cultural correct way, maybe like that. And then sometimes we experience an event or a series of events that leads us towards the second part of our lives, and then we tend to change something about what we are doing and about who we are, or not, or to be more precise, maybe not to change, but to start to listen to ourselves, to our soul, and to the world. So what's our own true calling? Could you share a little bit about what has been this awakening moment for yourself?
I will. I think this is for most people that find their way to our work, that there's a couple of things that happen. One is that there's a crisis in their life, and then also there's a longing, a deep longing for something that they're not living yet. And so often they can't even quite name it. But it's a crisis, so it's two things, crisis and longing. The crisis is, I can't live this way anymore. It's not bringing me to fulfillment, right? And then again, the other piece is the deep longing. I know there must be something else for me in this life. And I think we're hearing our own deep longing erupting up, because so many of us, I think, are, busy doing what we think we ought to be doing. In the way, sort of like a conformist culture, if you will, right? And I think most people go through a moment in their life when they actually hear their own soul, their own wholeness speaking and whispering to them, and they've sort of pressed it down for so long, and at some point they just can't do it anymore. And then they're at a crisis point and a deep longing. And that's been true for my own story as well. I remember, many years ago finding this work, and I felt like I was doing some really interesting work in the world, but it never really felt like it was mine. And I remember thinking, the rest of my life, I want it to be very juicy, very rich, full of meaning, especially, as we watch our world around us unravel. What can I do to help be a part of what Joanna Macy calls the great turning transformation, a moment when humans are in a mutually enhancing relationship with the earth, which I think is what our soul wants, and our wholeness. And so we all feel that.
And usually there's also, you mentioned this longing, and you also mentioned the crisis. Usually there's some sort of this, I don't know how to call it, maybe trigger point. That's this, this last drop that moves me and that invites me to do something. So
right.
Was it also something similar with you?
Yeah, you know, think of the Mary Oliver poem. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. And it's kind of like a midlife crisis. For many people, it's kind of like, you could say, soul's last ditch effort to get you. You know, you can no longer deny that voice that says, begin this deep journey and become more fully human. You know, because collectively, and we can get into this more later, collectively, you could say in the modern world, in the Western world, we've stalled out in a kind of adolescence. And we're consumed by adolescent habits and desires. And we don't really have adults and elders running much of anything, right? And we all feel that because we're shutting down the life systems of the planet, right? So anyways, we want to help people how to become more fully human and to listen to their own depths and their own knowing, right?
Well, yeah, I partly understand what you are saying. I now been some part of my life in that point, and I also have spoke with several persons as well who have been in that moment. And it's when we are at that point, so sometimes it's quite easy for us to think about second step or third step or ninth step, but there's always this question about the very first step, the very beginning. And so do you remember what was your first step and what you were doing when you finally felt this?
Finally knew what I had to do. Well, I remember a relationship ended for me. I almost died from pneumonia. And I remember, you know, working, I was freelancing as a graphic designer, which I loved partly doing. And I was doing some interesting work in the world, but it was never really fulfilling me. And I just always had this itch inside of me, like, there must be something more to living and a lawn to mow and a mortgage to pay, right? And again, especially watching the world around us unravel. And so that was kind of always burning within me. And I guess you could say with the work at Animas, with hindsight, I feel like I was in like a thin cocoon, you know, a thin metamorphosis, a thin transformation, and not really coming into a fuller imago self, like caterpillar to butterfly. I sort of was like spinning my wheels and really I think looking for elders or something that would help me to grow up really and become more fully human and on some level I kind of had a hint of that. And so anyways, I found out about Bila Plotkina's book, Soulcraft, Crossing into the Mysteries of Nature and Psyche. When I read that, it just blew my socks off. And I was like, oh, these people are doing something pretty incredible around helping people to become more fully human, which involves waking up their visionary self, the one who can envision new possibilities in the future, potent ones that are really powerful. And because I think we all want to belong to this great turning that's coming up. I think we're all feeling and wanting that. And then also, you know, orienting myself primarily to the more than human world, not just the human world, but the more than human world. And so that's what we help people to do at Animas. The main thing, awaken their visionary self and find their primary membership in the more than human world. So anyways, coming to Animas really helped me to awaken to those two possibilities and awaken the visionary one within me, who now serves as the guide for Animas, helping other people to awaken their visionary self and to get on fire with something that brings them so alive, they're so passionate about, that really the world is longing for as well. You know, it's like, again, like where you could say their great joy in the earth's great need intersects, right? I think we all long for that sweet spot. but don't know how to get there. Right.
Were those things you mentioned about Bill's ideas on Socrates that touched you and spoke to you like immediately, or you discovered those gradually, or?
Oh, it spoke to me immediately. Oh, yeah. I've been involved in so many of the things and the practices that we do at Animas. I've been doing some of those, but then I walked into an Animas circle and I did a vision fast, which is what we're doing here now on this property here, on your all's place. And I did a vision fast with Bila Plotkina and Janine Marie Hogan. And it was like, wow, they're doing all the things I've been interested in. They're doing them way better. And they've added a lot more to it. You know, that's what I was saying earlier. It just really blew my socks off. And it was like all roads led to that. It's like when I look back, it was like everything that I was interested in when I was younger, they were all heading this way to doing this work. And that's kind of like what I try to help people to find. What are all roads in them? What are all those roads in them? What is that leading them to? And to find their ultimate place of belonging on earth.
You earlier already mentioned this collective culture aspect. And basically we know that also what Bill writes about Socrates and what Bill is doing is helping people to get to know ourselves in order that we can bring something to our community. So do you feel that you are already there?
I do, really, I do. I really feel like I made a commitment to that as well, to live my own larger story into the world. Made a commitment to soul, had a ceremony and everything around that, committing. And I really do live that larger story into the world, and it's my main map, if you will. That I refer to, like people ask me to do things or other things that my muse might want to do. I have to sort of like check in with this vision that I have of like helping people to transform. Because you only got so much energy in your life, right? So I keep it in this area generally and serve that soul. But yeah, I feel like I'm really living you could say a soul-centric life into the world, living what I've envisioned from my own depths, you know, and giving space and room for that, to grow and flourish.
Okay.
And we'll help others do that.
Also, I do not remember this author, but I read that the idea that things that we are being challenged by as individuals or persons actually in some way reflects the way how our culture is evolving and turning and changing. Knowing that you have worked with a lot of persons in both sides of Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
So what are your senses, what you feel, and what can you say, what is this greatest challenge of our cultures today?
Oh, you mean just generally all over the whole planet? I think human development is our greatest challenge. How do we help people to develop into full humans, into our full humanity? Because I mentioned before earlier, there's been, you could say like a general decay for a long time in human development, and that we don't really have built into the whole structure and fabric of our culture how to help people to mature into a really healthy childhood, into a really healthy adolescence, into a real healthy adulthood, or into a real healthy elderhood. Most of those stages, people fail at all four of those stages in our culture. And Bill, you probably already know this, wrote a book called Nature and the Human Soul. And in that he has a wheel that, a soul-centric developmental wheel that paints a portrait for how he believes that nature intended for humans to grow psychologically and spiritually through 8 stages of a life. And there's 2 for adolescence, 2 for childhood, 2 for adult, and 2 for elder. And in that, he goes into great depth of like, here's what you would cultivate in your wholeness, you know, and there would be tasks that need to happen in culture, and there are tasks that need to happen in nature for each one of these 8 stages. And in our cultures, the nature tasks are almost entirely missed. And the ones that are done in culture aren't even done very well. And so of those 8 stages, he feels like collectively, most of us have stalled out in stage 3, which is an adolescence phase. And many of us don't even get into a robust adulthood. Which earlier I mentioned was one who's awakened their visionary self and one whose primary orientation is the more than human world. So you can see right there that that's kind of not happening very well for most of us. So human development is really important. It's like, how can we all get together on this planet, you could say, and agree to some idea of how do we help people to mature? Because we don't really have elders running much of anything that have that, you know, 7-generation vision, that have the whole earth in mind when they make decisions about how a company is run and about the kinds of pollution that, and you know, the kinds of consequences that like industry is doing. You know, there's often no sense of that at all. Elders wouldn't be putting up with what we're most of what the organizations and structures are doing on the planet right now. Not a true elder. They'd be like, you can't do that. That's too damaging to the planet. And right there, you can see there's not many elders for that in just that area, right? Does that make sense? You with me?
It's maybe a little bit a challenging question. So, do you believe that this human development path is something that everybody need to do and that everybody have resources for doing that?
You know, probably if enough of us could do it, you know, I'm just kind of speculating, I'm not sure for sure, but my sense is if enough of us could do that, that would bring enough consciousness, if you will, to the larger, you know, Earth community of humans. You know, if enough people were thinking that human development is really what we need to up, again, so we can have adults and elders who make really wise choices moving forward. Right.
Also thinking about this availability for going with the past. So if we're looking in Western countries, and also in United States of America, so quite a large part of those people who are going this path actually is quite privileged already. Right. And it's not always easy accessible.
Right, exactly. And you could say then, like collectively, how do we make it more accessible? Really. And here's the other truth too, is that it's actually suppressed. Most of us are not encouraged to develop fully. In the culture, you won't make a really good consumer, right? You wouldn't be consumed by adolescent habits and desires, which makes you a really good consumer, conformist, or rebel, or whatever it might be. You know, I think people who would really mature would be creating different systems than what we have. And that would be kind of challenging to the status quo, if you will, of the way our whole world is set up. So I think what we need are, you know, evolutionary, visionary, and even revolutionary ideas brought forth moving forward. And again, adults and elders would do that. They would be forward-seeing homo imaginans, imagining a new future that would really challenge the structures that are so embedded, and challenge the inertia that we collectively have that's making change almost impossible, real change, right? Yeah, and the windows is getting smaller and smaller, right? It's like what we're doing on the planet.
Yeah.
We have a small window to turn things around, I think. It's my sense. I hope I'm wrong. But, you know, right? Yeah.
You also mentioned this, this 7-generation vision. And does you and does the Animas have such a vision? So, and it's, let's not call it a plan. But more like a vision. So, where should we need to go? How we need to go?
Yeah. Well, part of our thought about that is that where could this journey of the soul go for the next maybe 100 years? Like, and how could we get something like Bill's model, the soul-centered developmental wheel model, you know, embedded in the cultures in large, so where, again, human development comes to the fore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, I think, going to be critical moving forward to help people, again, to become more mature and make better decisions for their lives and for the lives of the animals that we share this earth with, and the habitats, and the planet, the health of the planet itself, right? Yeah.
And one more maybe challenging question. So, what's your own belief? Whether is it possible for any human in the world to become like 100% cool, 100% fulfilled, and to be like achieve some position where this person can truly be aware about what she or he is doing, and is like elder or teacher or someone else.
For somebody to make it like into like a robust elderhood, is that the question? Yeah. You know, I think, you know, people do get there, but kind of on their own. You know, they kind of just find their way through that. But I think it's a relatively small percentage of adults actually make it to that. And I think people definitely get there. I think what we're offering at Animas and other organizations similar, and people like Joanna Macy and Thomas Berry and folks like that, is like, how do we help create the elders to be, the future elders to be. So that's kind of like what we're all kind of going at. Because the elders are the ones who are watching the whole village. They're watching the whole world. They've got the 15 billion year old fireball evolutionary history in their consciousness. They've got the big picture in their consciousness. They see the whole picture, you could say, and they see how everything that we do affects the whole thing. And so, I think some people make it there, you know, like Joanna Macy. And we often say that we're helping people to offer a piece of that to folks, to help them to find that kind of internal knowing and growth, right? Yeah.
And also this growing, usually it is about some sort of our inner cultivation or some practices and things that we do daily. Maybe if you could share, so what are your own daily practices that you are doing for yourself?
One thing I do every single day, the first thing I do every single day is I get on the floor and I get in my body and I stretch. I stretch. I feel into my own breath. I remember my dreams. And then I survey my own being and psyche of like, what do I need to do today that would, before like my to-do list. Like of like, I gotta run to the vet, I gotta go to the store, I need to do this work. But it's like on a deep level, what is it that needs to happen today? Oh, you know, I really want to work with this dream I had last night. Or, you know, I really need to just take down an instrument and play and be in touch with my own muse and joy. Or I want to go out and walk on the wild earth and feel the awe and wonder and beauty of earth. Or I want to go lie down on the earth. But So I'm listening for that.
Yeah.
And I try. I don't always succeed, but to make that kind of priority for that day, like where's that going to fit in?
Yeah.
You know, so I get in my body, feel my breath, I feel into what happens before I, you know, begin my plans, my other to-do list plans. So that's definitely, and then I have a dog too, so I do get out and walk on the earth every day, and praise, you know, earth, and praise the beings, and be in awe and wonder. So that's some of what I do every day. Yeah, try to be in touch with my own muse and creativity. Yeah. Probably more I could say around that, but I think it's a little bit, a lot more I could say.
And one more question regarding your own practices. Sometimes it tends that in one period of life, there is one thing that I feel that I need to do, and some other, so some things tend to change. Have you also experienced those changes of practices you need to do?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like what's going on in my life.
And what has been the way you have figured out? So what I need to work more in this period.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's kind of like when I hear that, I'm kind of thinking like, where's my center of gravity in my life? Like what stage of life am I in, or what's happening in my life, or what's up in my life? And this might sound pretty radical to people, but I actually listen to my dream life a lot. My dreams often show me what's next. The dream maker, who I call my inner muse, is often giving us information about how to live our life. You know, often the dream maker is saying, hey, Doug, listen to this. Or Doug, I want you to live more of this into the world. Or Doug, I want you to know this more. Or even, Doug, you're wrong about this. You know, I want you to reassess this. And part of that is because I've learned to really trust this depth of wisdom that lives in the deep psyche, which is where the dreams come from. So some very wise part of me, soul, you could say, is always dreaming and imagining what's next for this, right?
Yeah.
Nothing, my sense is nothing happens that hasn't been dreamt or imagined first.
Yeah.
You know, Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yeah.
We should listen to our imagination, the one who dreams and imagines possibilities.
Also, for following our imagination, we need to have some courage.
Yes.
Where you are getting your courage to follow dream makers' impulses.
Right. Yeah. You know that is a good question, because like, how do you find the courage? Because so many of us are encouraged not to. And not to listen to dreams, that they're just nothing. They're just random firings and gobbledygook. You know, and we're also encouraged to conform, you know, to what's going on, you know, in the culture. And my work is to help people to launch beyond the social and psychic limitations of culture, and to help them find the courage. You know, it's kind of like earlier what you're saying, though. Most of us come to a crisis. You know, and then something shifts in us. We've tried all these other angles, and they're not working either. And then back to that Mary Oliver poem. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Something in us awakens, and it's kind of by grace. In some ways, it's kind of by grace. Something in us awakens, and we find the courage to finally ask deeper questions about who we are at the core and what our lives are really about. Again, beyond the social and psychic limitations of consumer industrial culture that's sort of living a certain narrative that's limiting and harming the planet greatly. So what are the new narratives we can dream and imagine for ourselves that help contribute to the great trend?
Well, in Latvian language we have this saying that it's quite easy to get lost in in the middle of three pine trees.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's always quite hard to get out of this tiny wood.
It is.
To get somewhere else.
It is. Oh, it is. Yeah. We have all these protective parts too.
Yeah.
You know, we help people cultivate their wholeness and also delve into the fragmented or protective parts that want to keep us contained and small and living a smaller story, right? To protect us, right? For good reasons.
Yeah.
At least in their minds, right? Yeah. But we help people to do some really deep healing of their protective parts so that they can find the courage to live that courage that most of us have. We all have that courage, whether we listen to it or not. We often have a lot of wounded or protective parts that go away.
Yeah.
You know, but if you do that, if you help people cultivate enough wholeness and do enough self-healing work, it's hard to say no to soul. And to courage. It's hard to say no to that.
Soul practices and programs are quite closely also connected with different sort of arts, with poetry, with images. I know that you are also an artist, and that's a way how we can get to know our soul and to express something that's there at the moment. What are the things? How you? Maybe you could share. How by doing art, by performing art, you can find this small thread which actually comes from my deep imagination, or from my deeps, rather than something is built from my head and
Well, it speaks to two different kinds of imagination, you could say. Maybe there's more. But like you could say there's, for lack of a better word, a shallow imagination that my rational mind, I can see myself going over there and putting this up on the shelf or building a shelf. But then there's that deeper imagination where my mind's not involved at all. It's coming from the depths of my own psyche through my muse, which is not involving the rational mind until I actually perform it. So, like again, Einstein, he came to all of his great formulas through his imagination. I'm paraphrasing this, but and then he would go into the laboratory, or laboratory, whatever you all say here, and he would prove them right through his mind. And he said the imagination is more important than the mind and knowledge. So, anyways, I help people to listen deeply to their own imaginations and the images that live there. One of the premises is that one of the main ways that soul speaks to the everyday consciousness or the ego is through images. Image is the root word of imagination. So imagination is a series of images. And so, think about dream time. It's a series of images and vignettes and plays, right? And dramas that play out of images. And so the psyche speaks in symbol, image, metaphor, deep emotions too, kinesthetic knowings. And so in this program, Art and Soul, that we're getting ready to do here next week, the work is to help people to access those images, through different kinds of soulcraft practices that get around, circumnavigate everyday consciousness to get down into the stream of images that live within us, and to do artwork. And it's not so much the finished product we're interested in this program. It's more of like when you work with the image, it often gets clearer what that image is and what it's leading to, right? So as you work with it, and then you're looking at this image, you're feeling this image, you're even dreaming and imagining even more into it. And how does it relate to these other images that are in my life and all these other threads of my journey that I'm on? And it's like you get a picture, or you get the way all these threads or these images come together, you get a kind of collage, or you get a tapestry, of the larger story that you're being invited to live into the world. So much of what we're about is tapping into the deep imagination, finding the images that are guiding us to something in our lives. Really juicy.
To that extent, sometimes I have been thinking that so actually the very last thing that's being left after we go to some other places, other worlds, are stories. Sometimes those stories we can reveal only when the person is gone. But what I'm hearing from you is that you are helping to live in this very story at the very moment. Is that something that this Art and Soul program is about?
Yeah. It's like to help you get, a better glimpse at what's mine to live in this world. And my deep, you say the soul knows how to grow and what to become, like an acorn seed knows how to grow and become an oak tree. You could say our own soul, this comes from James Hillman, a great post-Jungian, our own souls know how to grow and what to become, and are always offering up images and hints of like what my particular gifts are, or soul powers, or ways of being are. And so it's like we want to help people to remember and to listen to the muses, their own musings, because the muse in each one of us is amused by certain things. And my muse isn't the same as yours. So everybody's like a thumbprint and a snowflake. We all have different musings. And what are those things that are so amusing to us, that bring us so alive? And what are the particular gifts and powers I have around that? And to go live that into the world. Some part of us knows what that is, you could say. Or how to create that, give life to that.
And closing our conversation now, the last question is, in the beginning we were speaking about this hardness to step and do this first step. So maybe what would be your suggestions to those who are not yet there and who are still, maybe who are already experiencing crisis, who are maybe sensing this longing, but haven't yet done this first step? What would
Right. Well, one thing would be to read Soulcraft or Wild Mind book by Bila Plotkina, for sure. Another would be to really sit down and listen to what it is you're really longing for. The longing, the deep longing within us can lead us to everything. Guide us to what we're really wanting in life, But maybe you're asking for more of a practice or something, right? Again, probably pick up one of Bila Plotkina's books. It'll set you on fire and help identify, what facets of my wholeness are not full yet, or what kind of subpersonalities are in the way for me, Another one would be just get out on the wild earth, and go and go as a pilgrim, like a pilgrim with a supple body, an open heart, and vulnerable. And what happens with you out on the land? What do you hear yourself musing on when you're out on the land? What comes alive for you, right? Nature has always been one of those great places of renewal. We wander off into the secret laboratories of the wilds and reinstall ourselves in the natural world. Things just come alive for us. We're vulnerable out in the natural world. And again, at Animas, that's what we help people to do. It's to go out into nature and have these really deep, beautiful, courageous, wild, and wonderful conversations with the natural world. With their own inner psyche as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doug, for this conversation. Thank you for having time for this. And good luck to you and your co-guides with the programs you're doing here.
Thank you very much. It'd be great to be here. Great questions.
Thank you. This program was Spiritual Practices, How to Find the Right One. Conversations with people about our choices. See you next time.